Happy to hear what people have.
So it's taken a little while for this building to be built and the process of that. So take us through that.
That's right. So the idea for a county museum or a regional history museum actually started in 1912 with the Waterloo Historical Society. And when they were founded in 1912, their first president said we should have a fireproof county building. So here we are 99 years later, and we've just opened our new museum, and then this building is our collection storage building, and it opened in the mid-90s. So this building is where we house the objects, preserve them, store them, and then the museum, the new museum, is where we exhibit them.
So let's talk about the building itself, because as a visitor walking into the building, there's some artifacts that are on the wall, in the floor. It's quite a sight to see.
That's right. We have built history into that building. So as our visitors walk in, the first thing they'll notice is the roadway that they walk in on, which is the Huron Road, which was built starting in the 1820s and was an active road right up into the 20th century. And then as you get into the building a little further, you find that road crosses a set of railway lines that's right in the middle of the building.
It's a glass floor.
And there's a glass floor at that point, where everyone likes to either stop or jump up and down on. They're not quite sure what to do. Or get off of. I've seen everyone do that. And that's the Galt to Elmira branch line of the Grand Trunk system. So they cross, and did cross historically, right in the middle of our building.
And one that's eye-popping as you're driving down Homer Watson Boulevard is that color wall.
That's right, and you either love it or you hate it, I think. So it started out, that big colorful wall, as an ode to quilting and textile traditions in this region. But somewhere through the middle of the design of the building, our architect said to us, it reminded them of a computer punch card. And so they came back to us and said, if we translate the way the color appears on the wall into something called hexadecimal computer code, which operates on a factor of 8, you can actually have an embedded message in the wall. And the message is one that Wilfrid Laurier said in a speech in 1905 when Alberta and Saskatchewan entered Confederation. And it talks about celebrating the land that you've just immigrated from, but as well as the land that your children will grow up in. And it's a lovely sentiment. It very much reflects what is happening with the exhibits in that museum and celebrating people who've come to this community.
Thank you very much, Tom, for answering our questions about the museum and the artifacts and showing us around this storage area. I'm Jill Burley. More Daytime after this.
Right between the English, Irish, and French Canadians, it seems to have been a pretty peaceful place overall. Based on my take as a newcomer to the region.
Thank you to the Mennonites. Oh.
Well, I think it's thank you to everyone.
Welcome back to Daytime Live on location from the Waterloo Region Museum. You're seeing some of the exhibits at the museum, and if you're wondering who decides, who puts this together, who helps to guide the process in deciding the exhibits that are the long-term and the temporary exhibits here at the Waterloo Region Museum, well, we're going to answer your question right now because one of the people behind that joins me right now. James Jensen is here, who is the curator of new exhibits, and you're the man that helped to sort of guide through the process of deciding what this museum would look like.
Well, I think, yeah, the phrase guide is the right way to put it. I don't do my job alone. Certainly everybody on staff has had input into how the exhibits have taken shape. And when you look at all of the people who have helped us in one way or another, it certainly exceeds well over 100 different people from the community and outside the community who have helped create the exhibit. And obviously, I take my direction from the curator manager, Tom, as well as the steering committee, who helped guide the process overall. So it's not the James Jensen show. If it was, I would probably be dead right now.
Well, and I think people here are very proud to say this is the Waterloo Region show that's going on here, and you've played a part in helping to put it together. I'm looking at it thinking, this is absolutely stunning. It's beautiful. And then I listen to you talking about, yes, and here's what's coming up for 2012, and here's what's coming up for 2013 and 2014. You're already looking around the museum and looking how this living history is going to be changing over the next while.
Right. I mean, one of the tricky things with doing a long-term exhibit like this is not so much deciding what stories we're going to tell, but what stories we're not going to tell. And using our temporary exhibit gallery allows us to talk about those things in more detail that may not be in this gallery at all, or that we just touch on briefly. So yeah, we're looking at the exhibits we're going to bring in from other museums in 2013 and starting to think about the next show we'll produce in-house in 2014.
The way you're telling these stories is what truly amazes me here. It's not just static displays that people walk up, they read a plaque on, and they walk away from. We're in the age now where it's multimedia. There are so many different methods of not only telling the story, but one of the words that you used in describing this was entertaining people. And I don't think we often think of history and entertainment in the same phraseology, and yet that's exactly what you've done. You're engaging people through a number of different entertainment medias.
That's right. I think sometimes museums in general, and certainly history museums, fall into a trap of doing things in one way that plays into people's stereotypes about how they were taught history in high school or the history museums they've been to. I'm lucky to have a pretty diverse background, so I don't look at a history museum as just being, well, we have to do it this way. You can include media, you can include hands-on interactives, you can include computers, as well as obviously using the artifacts to help tell the story. And people do learn if they're having fun. Yes, there's a lot of educational material in here, but really if it's a lot like being in school, then it does play into their stereotypes that history is dry, boring, dusty, black and white, old wood and rusty things, and black and white photos, as opposed to history was yesterday and it's made up of your plastic BlackBerry or things you find around your house. So we do try to find those hooks about today that engage people about the past.
Well, part of the reason you need to do that, this is not just a museum for you, for me, for adults. It's very much a family museum. And you're engaging people here. Anybody can walk through the exhibits, from the youngest member to the family to the grandparents.
Right, and we certainly do want to provide a multi-generational experience, and that's why there's a lot of things that are at a lower level. Adults can still reach them, obviously, but they are intended to be reachable by children. I'm 6'2", so I often have to get down on my knees to remind myself what it's like to be younger and not quite so high, just to make sure that we get the placement of things at the right height. And that includes things that kids can just touch, which adults like to do too. It's one common thing in museums. People want to get into the cars, into the planes, and touch the things. So we do try to provide opportunities for that.
Well, and I was noticing that on some of the plaques, because so often in a museum it's the don't touch, stay back, go behind the red line and make sure that you don't touch. You actually, on some of the plaques, it says please touch on them, so that people know that they can go up, you can touch it, you can look at it, be part of it.
Right, and in some cases those are reproductions, but in other cases they're the real thing. and they're durable enough that you can actually get your hands on them without hurting them. Because it is a very real human need, and people come into museums and they see the real stuff and they think, well, what's it like to get in the wagon? We can't let you get into the wagon, but we can try and provide some kind of experience that gives you a tactile representation of what that might be like.
You mentioned that you've got quite a diverse background, having worked in Boston, having worked in Connecticut, and now you're here, you're home, and working with the Waterloo Region Museum. And I was wondering, your experiences in being a curator in Boston, Connecticut, versus being a curator here at the Waterloo Region Museum. How different an experience is this for you?
Well, it's hard to say. I mean, my specialty is in developing exhibits and project managing the process to get them built. I think I was a lot closer to the content and learning a lot. I'm not from the region. Obviously I'm Canadian, but my dad was in the military, so I moved around a lot. So learning about my new home as we prepared the exhibits was really interesting. Whereas other projects I've done, it's been a topic that I just had to get comfortable with, whether it was symphonic music, the history of comic books, preschool science. Whereas here, you really have to understand that you're telling the story of people who are like me, new here, or who have lived here for generations.
For people who haven't made it out to the museum yet, maybe you could tell us a little bit about some of the ways that you are telling the story that are a little bit different or unique here at the Waterloo Region Museum.
Well, I think we've alluded to some of them. There's a lot of things that you can touch. You can get very close to the artifacts. And we do tell the story from the standpoint of the people who live here. The story is not driven by the objects. The story is driven by the story of the people who have come to live here more than anything else. So it's very easy to find yourself or find things that relate to yourself. If we're talking about the Portuguese, the story of a Portuguese family coming here, maybe very similar to why your family came here. And we do include a lot of media, although a lot of it is not interactive media, because we really can't compete with video games and the web now. So we try and provide experiences that allow people to dig deeper into the exhibits. And we're hoping in the future to add a layer of additional information using QR codes, perhaps, so that people can use their cell phones to drill down a little deeper while still having a group experience with their families.
Well, this is all new to us. You're already working on the future of the Waterloo Region Museum and things that you'll see here, so make sure that you keep coming back. Thanks so much for joining us, James.
That was my pleasure.
Back in just a moment. Stay with us.
Thank you.
We're going to put it there and then see if they're good with that.
Great.
I'm going to yank him back here a little bit so he doesn't sneak out.
Sunshine, we're going to get you to count to 10, please.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Perfect.
All right, Brian, count to 10, please, sir.
1, 2,
Wrong,
3,
start all over
4, 5. Start over again?
That was unbelievable.
No, he's joking. Okay, that's good. Just
All
have
right,
a seat and
perfect.
get relaxed. That's
We're good. We were born good. Look at
Yeah.